Random Shark. So, if you haven't heard, one of the most popular streamers on Twitch recently came out admitting that he'd been unfaithful to his wife and that he'd be taking time away from his large streaming channel in order to try and patch things up with his family.
I'm gonna take time off to focus on my family.
And while a lot of people seem to be discussing this event in terms of their view from a moral argument,
it's really not anyone's fault here except for the doc himself.
What I personally find interesting is his decision to share this information with his audience in an attempt to retain some form of transparency with them.
And I just want to be completely transparent with you guys.
Now, before we get into this, let me say that I don't know much about DrDisRespect beyond this situation. I'm not personally a fan of game streaming. I'd rather watch a Let's Play or something if I'm going to watch gameplay, but from what I've gathered in the bits and pieces of streams that I've watched, DrDisRespect is a character. A character played by Guy Beam, who wears a mullet wig and a pair of sunglasses to play this alter ego. And given that he spent at least a large chunk of his career on Twitch playing this character, to hear him come out and credit transparency as his reason for sharing such personal information with his audience seems disingenuous to me for several reasons. The first and most obvious of those reasons being that his channel is based around that persona, and it's not based around some form of meaningful connection between DrDisRespect and his audience. It's based around the relationship of him entertaining them and them being entertained, at least I would assume. And since that is the assumption, it calls into question his reasoning for breaking that entertainer-audience bond. To put it into perspective, it would be like me, a shark person, randomly dropping the act to tell you that I accidentally killed my pet octopus, and I'm not dealing with it very well. It sucks, and perhaps some of you would relate to it, but why exactly is this information that you need to be privy to? Especially in a case like DrDisRespect, where his life isn't spoon-fed to you in daily 15-minute intervals.
Good morning, Jay Followers. What is Gucci Party, people? Woo!
So to me, it calls into question his motives for doing it. Perhaps it's as some suggest and he's worried about losing his sponsorships if word got out. Perhaps it's because he wanted to get in front of the story because it was going to get picked up by an outside party. Or perhaps he really did have some kind of odd, disconnected situation where he genuinely felt the need to break character and come clean with his audience on this particular issue. I have no idea, it seems odd to me, but I'm sure he had his reasons. However, this topic plays into another interesting discussion of online stars and their relationships with their audiences, and particularly, in my mind, is the question of how much of your life should those audiences be privy to. And while the obvious answer to that is, as much as they personally want to share with them, I think it could be an interesting question nonetheless. Such as with DrDisRespect. As I stated, he's not someone who readily shares personal information about himself online, and as such, his relationship with his audience is much less personal and more professional, if that makes sense. So when he does come out with very personal information about himself, it feels disjointed or disingenuous that his motives for sharing are truly in the interest of being transparent. Contrast that with someone like Boogie2988, who has a very personal, arguably too personal, relationship with his audience. So when Boogie recently came out on stream revealing information about his wife and her sexual exploits, or lack thereof.
She's got a new dick up north. Well, I'm gonna betray my wife's trust here.
It seemed much more genuine, because Boogie seems to treat his audience like a confidant, someone to talk to and be forthright about things that are going on in his life. And while some may argue that he may be almost too transparent with his audience at times,
she has been very sexual with me, but I'm one of the only people she's ever trusted that way.
And personally, I may be among them. If he feels comfortable enough with his fans to share his personal life, more power to him. Anyways, that's the video, guys. Like it, don't like it, let me know. I find transparency and the relationship with an audience to be very interesting personally, and undoubtedly at some point I'm going to do a YouTube Thoughts episode on it. As for DrDisRespect from a transparency standpoint, I find his revelation to his audience interesting simply because of the relationship that he presumably has with them. As for a moral standpoint, it's pretty cut and dry. He shouldn't have cheated on his wife, he's a dick for doing it, but hopefully they can work it out for the sake of his daughter. I do, however, think this is an issue that didn't need to be brought to the public attention since it didn't affect anyone outside of their relationship, so it calls into question why he felt the need to relay it to the masses. Hopefully, when he does get back into streaming and gets everything sorted, there will be more transparency about it. But since he brought it to the public attention and I find it interesting, I figured I'd talk about it a little bit. Shark pride for life, bro.